After convincing some of his fellow competitors to start a rebellion, Ji-hun sees his friend, Yoon-bae, mercilessly eliminated, along with all the other players who took part in the attack on the soldiers. However, instead of eliminating all those who have been disqualified, the guards leave some of them alive so that their organs can be stolen and sold. That afternoon, the players who chose to remain in their room receive a gift and, upon opening the coffin, find Ji-hun still alive. When he wakes up, the man discovers that none of his companions have returned to the room and realizes that the leader only allowed him back to watch the consequences of his actions. As 35 players were eliminated the night before, a large amount of money falls into the safe and the value of the final prize increases considerably. The remaining 60 players have the chance to vote again to decide if they want to go on to the next game, and, even after so many eliminations, 41 people choose to remain in the competition, as most of the players who were in favor of leaving that island lost their lives trying to help Ji-hun in his rebellion. The opposing side has gained strength, as most of the people there want to go all the way to take the whole prize. When all the members of the rebellion had been eliminated, No Aeol found a way to save Jong So, who was taking part in the onslaught against the guards. Instead of eliminating him, the young woman just shoots him and asks him to close his eyes if he wants to get out of that place alive. After sending him as a gift to the people who organized the illegal sale of organs, she convinces guard number 7 to take her to the place where the surgeries are carried out to meet the rest of the team. When they get there, No Aeol pulls out her gun and takes all the criminals hostage to prevent the doctor from performing the procedure on Jong So. Furious at having been tricked, number 7 attacks her and manages to steal her gun. However, at that moment, No Aeol grabs her pistol and eliminates all the criminals gathered in that room, except the surgeon, because she needs him to save Jong So. The next morning, on their way to the arena where the 4th match will take place, the survivors see the bodies of their colleagues hanging and realize that this is a warning about what will happen if they try to prevent the matches from going ahead. After separating the teams using colored balls, the host reveals that the next game will be hide and seek. The blue team will have to find the exit and escape within 2 minutes. Whoever can't escape has to hide from the red team until the end of the game. The red team's job is to find and eliminate the members of the blue team within 30 minutes. Anyone who refuses to do so will be eliminated. All members of the blue team have been given a key to unlock the arena doors and move around inside, but once the doors are unlocked, they cannot be locked again. On the other hand, the red team receives a knife as a gift, which they must use to eliminate the members of the blue team. Worried about his mother, Young-sik asks Mrs. Jang to stay well hidden so that no member of the red team can find her. Upon entering the room, the players decide to spread out to look for the exit with the promise that whoever finds it first will warn the others so that everyone can leave the arena. Just then, Jun-hee, who is pregnant, begins to feel ill and Mrs. Jang rushes to her aid. In an attempt to help them find a safe place to hide, Yeon-ju helps the pair up the stairs and, after 2 minutes, the arena doors open and the members of the red team enter the room. After saving Jong So's life, the surgeon is eliminated and No Aeol orders the player to put on guard number 7's costume. Seeing the timer running, the members of the red team split up to look for the players from the other team, who are hiding inside the rooms. While the hunters split up to look for their targets, Ji-hun goes after Dae-ho, as he considers him guilty of having caused the elimination of his colleagues. During the rebellion, Dae-ho was sent to get more ammunition, but he became afraid to return to the battle and gave up going to meet his colleagues. When he heard about this, Ji-hun considered him a traitor and took on the mission of avenging the members of his team who had been eliminated because of Dae-ho's betrayals. Seeing the young man trying to escape, Ji-hun runs after him and manages to corner him. However, as he prepares to strike the first blow, he realizes he's got the wrong guy and lets his victim escape. With Nam-gyu's help, Myung-ji-I eliminates one of the blue team's participants and is shocked to see his knife smeared with blood. Meanwhile, Yeon-ju and Mrs. Jang help Jun-hee escape from a pursuer, but the girl ends up falling while climbing the stairs and, instead of abandoning her, Yeon-ju risks her own life to try to protect her. During the battle, she manages to knock the knife out of the hands of player 226 and must eliminate him with a blow to the heart to save the lives of her allies. After eliminating a player from the opposing team, Myung-ji-I goes after Jun-hee, her ex-girlfriend, because she wants to help her escape the game. When she fell down the stairs, she broke her foot and has a hard time walking. While she is taking a break, Jun-hee begins to give birth and Mrs. Jang decides to help her with the delivery. After betraying her team and fleeing while the people who trusted in her mystical powers are eliminated, Son Nyeo finds the exit and discovers that 3 types of keys are needed to open that door. As she only has the round key, she sets off in search of the other 2 types and uses the blood of one of the eliminated players to mark an arrow indicating the exit. After giving birth, Mrs. Jang wraps the baby in her coat and gives it to Jun-hee. At this point, player 202 appears and Yeon-ju attacks him to protect her allies, but ends up being hit and has to continue the fight even though her leg is injured. After removing the knife from her enemy's hands, the woman strikes him repeatedly and manages to eliminate him. At that moment, she sees a door with 3 locks and realizes that she has just found the way out. Since she has Mrs. Jang's and Jun-hee's keys, Yeon-ju manages to open the door and, instead of going through, she goes after her friends. However, when she opens the door, Yeon-ju is cowardly attacked from behind and Jun-hee discovers that the guy who eliminated her friend was her ex-boyfriend. After being betrayed by the old man who had the other 2 keys needed to open the door, Son Nyeo ends up being found by Min-soo and is eliminated by him. When he finally finds Dae-ho, Ji-hun attacks him and tries to convince himself that it was he who eliminated his team, but the young man reminds him that it was Ji-hun who started the rebellion and, if it hadn't been for him, all those men would still be alive, including Yoon-bae. However, Ji-hun doesn't listen to him and remains determined to finish the young man off, squeezing his neck until he's eliminated. With Mrs. Jang's help, Yoon-hee manages to find the exit, but then Yong-sik appears and reveals that he hasn't managed to eliminate anyone. So, to make sure he gets out of the game alive, he walks towards the young woman and, to protect Jun-hee and her baby, Mrs. Jang offers her own life as a sacrifice. However, instead of attacking his own mother, Yong-sik pushes her away and goes after Jun-hee, but ends up being hit by Madame Jang, who attacks her own son to save the girl and her baby. Just then, the timer resets and the game comes to an end. As he hasn't managed to eliminate anyone in 30 minutes, Yong-sik is eliminated. Upon returning to the room, the survivors are informed that 35 players were eliminated in the 4th game, so there are only 25 people left in the competition for the grand prize. Once again, after the vote, the circle wins, as most of the players are determined to go all the way to take the full prize, even after Mrs. Jang begs everyone to end the nightmare. That night, while everyone is asleep, Mrs. Jang approaches Ji-hun to make a request and says that she believes he entered the game to save people. So the old woman makes him promise that he will keep Jun-hee and her baby safe whatever the cost, because it's not that child's fault that he was born in that horrible place. Meanwhile, No Aeul breaks into the officer's office and threatens to expose all his secrets if he doesn't help her get off the island with guard number 16, who is actually Jong So. The next morning, when he wakes up, Ji-hun discovers that Mrs. Jang has put an end to everything because she couldn't live with the pain of having eliminated her own son. Impacted by the loss of the little lady, Jun-hee begins to cry and, even though she feels like consoling her ex-girlfriend, Myung-ji doesn't have the courage to approach her after what he's done. Suddenly, a voice announces that the 5th game will start soon and everyone gets up to go to the arena. Even with a broken foot, Jun-hee knows they have no choice but to take part in the competition and leaves her baby alone in the room. However, as she is leaving, the young woman hears the child crying and decides to take it to the arena. Determined to keep his promise to Mrs. Jang, Ji-hun takes the baby on his lap and assures her that he will help Jun-hee take care of it. When they arrive at the arena for the 5th game, the players see the potato chip doll facing a scary doll and discover that they will be taking part in a jump rope challenge. The aim is to cross the bridge while jumping rope and they have to get to the other side in no more than 20 minutes. Seeing the state of Jun-hee's ankle, Ji-hun begins to worry, but promises that he will do his best to help her. However, the young woman soon realizes that she won't be able to cross and asks Ji-hun to take her baby with him. The first player to try to cross is Nam-gyu, but he can't make much progress as he's knocked down before he's even halfway across the bridge. After tying the baby around his torso, Ji-hun begins the crossing and, when he reaches the halfway point, realizes that there is a flaw in the bridge. Despite this, Ji-hun manages to push on and, in a few seconds, he reaches the other side. Relieved to have managed to save the child, Ji-hun decides to go back to help Jun-hee, but the other players invade the bridge and he can't make his way back. The next player to cross the bridge is player 96. However, after crossing, he pushes the other competitors. His plan is to eliminate everyone in that round in order to press X in the next vote and share the prize only with Ji-hun. At this point, some of the players decide to leave the bridge and go back to where they came from, but contestant 203 takes the opportunity to push them too. Furious at player 96's attitude, Ji-hun threatens to do the same to him and manages to convince him to get out of the way. His goal is to help the competitors cross as quickly as possible so that he has time to return to rescue Jun-hee, as the girl is barely able to walk on her own. Seeing the mother of his child about to be disqualified, Myung-ji offers to help her and apologizes for attacking Yeon-ju, as he didn't know she was helping Jun-hee and her baby. Now that she knows about her ex-boyfriend's bad character, the young woman orders him never to come near her or that baby again and refuses his help. At this point, player 96 attacks Ji-hun, blaming him for destroying his chances of becoming rich. However, during the battle, Ji-hun hits his opponent in the eye with his thumb and pushes him back onto the bridge. As he can't get up in time to return, the man ends up being pushed down and falls over the cliff. When the last competitor finally makes it across, Ji-hun decides to go back to rescue Jun-hee, but the girl asks him to stay. Looking at the timer, she realizes that Ji-hun won't have time to cross twice more, so she asks him to survive to take care of the baby. After saying her last words, the girl jumps off the cliff and Myung-ji feels guilty for not having done anything to save her. Meanwhile, in the leader's room, the VIPs discuss what to do with the baby now that the mother has been eliminated, and some believe that he should also be eliminated, since his participation was tied to contestant 222. However, at this point, the leader decides to interfere and suggests that the child take his mother's place in the game, becoming the new contestant 222. When they receive this news and discover that the baby has taken his mother's place in the competition, the participants revolt and decide to eliminate him so as not to have to share the prize with another player. However, the guards decide to intervene and say that violence between the players will no longer be tolerated, as everyone must have a fair chance of winning the prize. Before leaving for the final game, the participants are given a large banquet as a courtesy, and even the baby is fed. During the meal, one of the guards announces the start of the vote, but before they have a chance to press the button, the man says that in the last game, the contestants themselves will have the chance to choose who the 3 people who will be eliminated from the competition will be. Finally, the 6 remaining players will share the grand prize. After announcing the rules of the next game, the host starts the voting, and Ji-hun and Min-soo are the only ones to press X. As a result, the pair become the target of the other contestants, who decide to eliminate them along with the baby. While piloting away from the island with Jong So, No Aeul receives a call from the leader and must return, otherwise the man will send one of his guards to the hospital to eliminate Jong So's daughter. In an attempt to ensure the girl's safety, No Aeul returns to the hideout and orders the player to hurry to meet his daughter, as she is in danger. That night, Ji-hun is summoned to the leader's office, who says he is open to making an offer to save his life and that of the baby. The man knows that the 2 of them have become the target of the next game, so he hands Ji-hun a dagger and orders him to use it to eliminate his opponents. Not understanding the leader's motives, Ji-hun asks what his interest is in helping him, and the man removes his mask. At that moment, Ji-hun discovers that In-ho, the guy who pretended to be his ally in the game, is the real leader behind the horror competition. Furious at discovering his betrayal, Ji-hun picks up the dagger and prepares to attack him, but realizes that doing so won't stop the game from taking place the next day. So Ji-hun picks up the dagger and walks back to the dormitory while trying to decide what he will do to ensure that child's survival. Determined to keep his promise to Jun-hee, player 456 walks towards his opponents while In-ho watches his every move. Years ago, when he took part in that game, In-ho also received a dagger as a gift from the former leader, and, thanks to that, he managed to become the big winner. Now it's his turn to test Ji-hun's character and find out if they are as similar as In-ho imagines. However, to the leader's surprise, Ji-hun hasn't given in to his instincts and decides to play the next game fairly, without taking any shortcuts to ensure his victory. The next morning, as the competitors prepare to walk to the game's arena, No Aeul invades the base and threatens the official to delete all of player 246's records. However, to ensure his survival, the officer says that there is a printed file in the leader's room, and if she wants to destroy it, No Aeul will have to keep him alive. However, as she enters the elevator to reach the top floor, the young woman is attacked and begins a duel against her superior. Just as she is about to be eliminated, No Aeul attacks him and manages to steal his blade, but ends up taking a blow to the head and falls to the ground. After having her abdomen seriously injured, the young woman drags herself to the elevator and manages to retrieve her weapon in time to eliminate her opponent. While the 2 fight for their lives, the contestants climb a lever to be taken to the top of the square. At this point, the host presents the rules of the game, which is called Squid Game. The contestants will have to push each other off the 3 platforms: the square, the triangle, and the circle. If the participants push 1 or more players off the platform while they are still alive, all the competitors pass the stage and go on to the next platform. After pressing the red button to start the timer, the players have 15 minutes to finish the first round and start a new vote to choose the first person to be pushed over the cliff. At this point, Myung-ji decides to intervene and, in order to prevent the old man from deciding to get rid of his son, he says that Min-soo is the easiest target. As no one there knows that Myung-ji is the child's father, Everyone decides to listen to what he is saying, but no one wants to push the young man, as they are afraid of being pulled along with him. To solve this problem, Myung Ji-I takes an iron bar that is attached to the center of the platform and pushes Min-soo down. At this point, a bridge forms so that the competitors can reach the triangle, and the group tries to convince Ji-hun to hand over the baby. However, the man refuses to do so the contestants threaten to knock him down together with the child. The problem is that by doing so, the players will be left with no one to discard and will have to choose someone from their group to sacrifice. So they decide to try to trick Ji-hun and claim that they will decide by lot who will be the next eliminated. Since he doesn't trust those guys at all, Ji-hun doesn't listen to him, so player 336 attacks him. However, when he sees that the man has his suit tied around his waist so that his allies can pull it off, Ji-hun takes out his dagger to cut the fabric and threatens to attack anyone who comes near him. While the man's back is turned, Myung Ji-I grabs the metal bar and orders 456 to get out of the way so he can take out player 336. After eliminating the competitor, the young man says he's on Ji-hun's side and reveals that that baby is his son. Realizing that it won't be easy to eliminate one of those two, since they're both armed, the old man and his group decide to choose the weakest among them to sacrifice and decide to get rid of player 39 in the next round. This way, the 6 survivors will be able to split the money and leave that place alive with almost 8 billion won. However, instead of letting his opponents choose who will be eliminated, Ji-hun insists on drawing lots, as he believes this is the fairest way to resolve the impasse. Just then, a fight breaks out between the two teams and Myung Ji-I is almost pushed off the platform. However, during the fight, he manages to turn the game in his favor and player 353 is the one who ends up falling off the cliff. Meanwhile, Ji-hun eliminates competitor 203 and saves the child. Before moving on to the next round, Myung Ji-I eliminates player 100 and the timer resets, announcing the end of the round. When he realizes that he will be the next to be discarded, player 39 decides to throw himself in, so he knows that he will disrupt Myung-gi's plans. While the young man thinks of a plan to ensure his victory, No Aul is in the room where the leader stores the printed files of all the players who took part in round 6 and sets fire to them. Knowing that it's too risky to allow Ji-hun to go through to the last platform, Myung Ji-I orders him to hand over his son, as he plans to throw him off the cliff to ensure his victory. When he realizes the young man's real intentions, player 456 refuses to hand over the baby and promises that he will allow Myung Ji-I to push him off the platform, so that the young man and his son can get out alive. However, instead of accepting the deal, Myung Ji-I insists that Ji-hun hand over the child and forces him to return to the triangle. Seeing that this is the only way to keep his promise, Ji-hun hands over the baby and jumps into the circle wielding his dagger. Knowing that Myung Ji-I is willing to eliminate his own son to save himself, player 456 comes to the conclusion that he doesn't deserve his sacrifice and decides to fight his way out of the game along with the child. During the duel, Myung Ji-I drops his metal bar and tries to pick up the dagger, but is unsuccessful. So his only option is to use the baby as a shield and threatens to let it go if Ji-hun approaches. At this point, the young man orders his opponent to hand over his dagger and player 456 decides to follow his orders to save the child. After being struck by Myung Ji-I, they both end up falling from the platform, but Ji-hun manages to hold on and still tries to save the man's life. However, just then, the suit Myung Ji-I was wearing to hold on rips and he suffers a huge fall. After the perishment of player 333, Ji-hun manages to drag himself back to the top and wins round 6 together with the baby. The problem is that when Myung Ji-I fell, the button to start the round hadn't been pressed yet, so his elimination didn't do any good. After pressing the button, Ji-hun realizes that he is faced with a difficult decision, but he remembers the promise he made to Jun-hee and, against all the expectations of the VIPs watching the game, he decides to jump to save the child's life, sacrificing himself and being eliminated from the game. Just then, the leader is informed that a Coast Guard boat is approaching and triggers the evacuation alert. While the staff are leaving the island, Ju-ho manages to break into the facility and goes after his brother. Seeing In-ho with a baby on his lap, the policeman gives up shooting and heads back out to sea because he knows there's a bomb in that facility. Minutes later, the entire island is blown up and, along with it, any evidence of the existence of a clandestine game that eliminates people. 6 months later, No Aul learns that both Jong So and her daughter are fine and is relieved to hear that the little girl has managed to get out of hospital. One day when Jun-ho comes home, he finds Jun-hee's baby, who was the last winner of round 6, along with a card containing the full prize of 45 billion won. After Ji-hun's elimination, In-ho decides to pay a visit to Ga-young to break the news and gives her a box containing all her father's belongings, including a card with a large sum of money. On his way back from the girl's house, In-ho spots a recruiter playing Didachi with a random guy in a hidden alley and realizes that a new edition of Round is coming. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.